Assalamu alaikum. You're watching NEWSROOM. I'm your host, Khalid. But today's topics are interesting, are diverse, but are very important for Pakistan. Let's discuss what we will be talking about during the course of the show. We'll begin, ladies and gentlemen, with of course, the situation as far as Pakistan's security is concerned and the resolve from our armed forces, from our government to combat terrorism in all its forms and manifestations. This is referring to the Chief of the Army Staff, who on Wednesday said that martyrs are our pride and their sacrifices will not go in vain till the return of complete peace and stability in Pakistan. How important is this in the current circumstances, where on the one hand we see the different tactics used by the TTP or the ISIK to destabilize Pakistan one way or the other, when we know that there are different players in the region that also do not want a stable Pakistan to exist? How important is Pakistan to stand firm on its own two feet and remove all such elements from Pakistan that are creating havoc in the country? This is going to be our first segment. Our second story, ladies and gentlemen, concerns the Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir region and the resolve by the O.I.C, which has called upon India to reverse all the illegal and unilateral measures taken after the 5th of August 2019 and to stop the gross, systematic and widespread human rights abuses in the Indian illegally held valley. We have been talking about that for a very long time. We try to highlight this as much as possible, and this needs to be said as much as often as possible so that India can revert its decision or might be put under pressure to do so. This is going to be our second story. Our third story concerns polio and how an environmental sample from Rawalpindi has tested positive for the wild polio virus type 1. Pakistan has been trying its level best to eradicate polio from Pakistan. The number of cases are extremely low, but nevertheless polio is still relevant or prevalent in one way or the other in Pakistan. And of course Pakistan has been doing different polio programs over the years and this year as well to eradicate polio from the country. And of course when such samples come forward, this creates a lot of question marks as far as where we are going wrong. This is going to be our third story. Let's begin with our first, and that concerns the nation's sacrifices that will not go in vain. This has been said by the Chief of the Army Staff. Pakistan, its counterterrorism strategies, its cooperation in counterterrorism with important players in the world. This and more will be highlighted in this very story. But before that, let's watch this short report.
Pakistan has been grappling with the challenge of militancy, but the entire nation is committed to combat terrorism because peace was gained through the sacrifices of thousands of Pakistani citizens and gallant security forces. Demonstrating the capability and resolve of security apparatus to uproot the menace of terrorism, security forces are effectively engaging with terrorists in South Waziristan. 4 terrorists were killed and 6 soldiers embraced martyrdom in an exchange of fire in South Waziristan district. The ISPR said that the Pakistani armed forces are determined to eliminate the menace of terrorism, adding that such sacrifice of our brave soldiers further strengthens our resolve. The security operation comes as Pakistan faces an uptick in terror activities, especially in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa and Balochistan, after the outlawed TTP ended its ceasefire with the government in November of last year. Chief of Army Staff General Sayyid Asim Munir emphasized that the martyrs are our pride and their sacrifices will not go in vain till the return of complete peace and stability in Pakistan. Caretaker Prime Minister Anwarul Haq Kakar categorically said that Pakistan would never surrender to radicalization, extremism, and intolerance, but would rather fight without falling prey to war fatigue. The nation firmly stands behind its armed forces in eliminating terrorism and pays glowing tributes to its gallant soldiers.
AVM Ijaz Malik Saab, who's a senior analyst, joins us in the studio to discuss more on Pakistan's counter-terrorism strategy as well as the terrorist influx from across different borders into Pakistan. Thank you very much, AVM Saab, to have joined us. Sir, first of all, I'd like to understand, we all know who the perpetrators are. We know it's TTP, we know it's the ISIK, we know there are other such elements that want to destabilize Pakistan. We know who are the countries that do not like to see a strong and stable Pakistan. What needs to be done now when we see such happenings, such incidents happening on a very regular basis in both Khyber Pakhtunkhwa and Balochistan?
Well, we need to understand that terrorist act per se is not the end objective. It is an instrument to achieve their own or their masters or their supporters their objectives vis-a-vis Pakistan's environment. and that is they want to create an uncertain conditions of insecurity within Pakistan, and more than that, perception management about Pakistan through these media savvy incidences where our soldiers, our innocent civilians, they are laying down their lives out of these terrorist activities, and they want to create a perception, a negative perception about Pakistan, so that Pakistan keeps struggling with its economy, because economy directly draws its strength from the political as well as security stability of the country. And as you have mentioned in your intro, we very well know who are the beneficiary of Pakistan's instability. These are not only our arch enemy, but certain other regional and global players who wants Pakistan to remain in this kind of flux, where we do not have flourishing tourism, where we do not have foreign direct investments, and where any investor, even the overseas Pakistani, would have to think twice before undertaking any joint venture or any project in Pakistan.
The whole aim is that, in fact, to destabilize Pakistan to such an extent that it does not rise economically as a strong and stable nation. The fact remains, let's begin with Afghanistan, let's begin with the Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan, as well as the ISIK, that both have their influx through the Afghan porous border. The fact remains that Kabul has more or less officially admitted that some rogue elements who operate inside of Pakistan belong to the TTP. But the fact remains that it needs to admit in full on what is actually going on. Why isn't it doing so? Is there any apprehension? Is there any, how should I say, assistance to such elements within Afghanistan that leads them to not say the truth as it is?
It's not only the admission. These words, we have been hearing rhetorics from them that we will not allow anybody to use our soil against any neighbors.
That was the first statement by Mr. Amir Muttaqi when
he but
became
what is the manifestation? That's the point. And we have reasons to believe that despite our border monitoring, there are areas which are vulnerable, and the Afghan-backed, if not the government directly, but there are elements within the current Afghan regime also who have a soft corner, because if you see, I mean, ideology-wise, they have their linkages, the TTP and the regime itself in the Kabul government. So I think we must demand from them to do something practically to stop, because such kind of elements, they are difficult, but they can be traced by the help of local human intelligence is very important, and if they know their hideouts, they must help Pakistan authorities to take care of them.
What is an effective strategy, AVM Saab, in the whole wake of a national action plan that is present there, in the wake of NACTA that is also effective in Pakistan? What needs to be done now to completely eliminate? We've waged 3 important wars against such elements in the last decades. Why is there still a trickling of these elements from across the border?
Actually, if we just go back in history, after Operation Zarbeaz and followed by Radul Fasad, we had cleared all the strongholds, and known hideouts were demolished. We had done very meticulously planned airstrikes against these targets, and we had cleansed that area. But the natural outcome was that some of them fled to Afghanistan, and some of them went into they morphed into a kind of sleeper cells, but they are being paid, they are being sustained through a mechanism of funding or social support or whatever means available to them, and as and when their masters, they want to give them some tasking, they do it with at a place of their choosing. And the pattern generally that we have seen, the focus is on Balochistan
and Khyber Pakhtunkhwa
and KP, and more so on the law enforcement agencies, and particularly our armed forces, because they want to demoralize directly the our warriors, our soldiers, our police, And also they want to create a sense of insecurity that if these law enforcement and the combat fighting machine is unable to secure itself, then the remaining public or populace is at the mercy of any such act.
When you talk of demoralizing the armed forces, I'd like to slightly divert, but when we see elements within the country that also demoralize our citizens against our armed forces and our defense, all the people who are at the front line when it comes to Pakistan's defense, it also creates an opportunity for such elements to further come into Pakistan and create more havoc. Why should the strategy that the National Action Plan envisages, should that also include elements that are within the country that are also trying to divert Pakistan and Pakistanis' attention and trying to create a negative perception about our armed forces?
Actually, if we go back, if we talk about National Action Plan, the essence of National Action Plan was a whole of the nation approach to combat this menace. And it was over and above our political affiliations, our sectarian or regional affiliations. But unfortunately, I would very candidly say that our political leadership, they have not been able to live up to the expectation of our people, and they have been utilizing every internal and domestic situation to just for point scoring.
All right.
And just see, I mean, the very recent incidents in past few months that, let's say, post 9 May, the way things were handled on media and the kind of negative campaign was done.
Even forget those. Let's talk about Batagdam and how the armed forces were there to help those, and even that was contorted in such a way.
Just a moment. If you just mention that, because disaster management is my specialty. I mean, it was splendid operations done by Pakistan Army, Air Force with the help of course, a few local volunteers. Just see the response time. Within 45 minutes, at a far-flung place, the first heli was airborne and in the area. First of all, they replenished their food supplies just because they were younger kids. So obviously, and the true state of morale is that one of the students, he gave a statement that we were very sure that we are going to die from this chairlift, but once we saw a heli approaching us, we thought now the army is there and we will be surviving.
AVM sir, the fact remains that there needs to be a joint resolve by Pakistan, by Pakistanis, to support our armed forces, those who are on the first line of defense when it comes to anything, when it comes to ETI, when it comes to TTP, or when it comes to ISIK, when it comes to incidents such as these. Our armed forces, our Air Force, our Navy, they are on the first line of our police forces.
Yes, and the entire campaign yesterday, till the time the last, even after the last person was rescued, it was all a negative social media campaign. And why didn't the first heli pick them up and things like that? They do not know the intricacy of such operation. There were high wires in that area. The wind conditions were not conducive, and safety of the rescuers was very important. So all those factors, we just forgot about them, and even people who put their own life at stake, their contribution was maligned with this negative propaganda.
That is so true, and that needs to end. To be very frank, this is something that I need to say that on national television. Our caretaker Interior Minister Sarfaraz Bukti Saab visited the NACTA headquarters. Therein he said something, and I quote, "A policy of zero tolerance for terrorism and extremism is required." Of course, he also praised the law enforcement agencies, but he also condemned the recent terrorist activity, and he said that the state will ensure a peaceful environment for the people by uprooting terrorism from the country. Let's go back to the policy of zero tolerance for extremism and terrorism. Does the NACTA and the National Action Plan envisage such a policy?
NACTA was formed with a national consensus by the political leadership, but unfortunately it had remained a toothless organization. It had no wherewithal to implement that. I mean, as far as the zero tolerance policy is concerned, it's very much there in news and in the statements by the present government or previous or even their predecessors. But what actions have they taken to to combat this thing at the grassroots level? The radicalization of our youth, the radicalization in some of the madaris, and people who have been blatantly challenging the writ of the government even in the capital of Pakistan. What to talk about in far-flung area or villages? What have we done to handle them? So I don't think so. It's more of a lip service. If NECTA was as effective as they were supposed to be as per their regulation and rules, I think we would have achieved a lot of results.
All right, let's come to counter-terrorism cooperation between Pakistan and other nations. We know that the US has time and again talked about it. We know that China has talked about it. The US, the CISS MOA has, the agreement has been signed between the US and Pakistan recently as well. How important is cooperating on counter-terrorism with countries that understand the regional perspective, that understand the region better than others?
These countries, collaboration with these countries, and for that matter any country which can help us train, help us equip and do capacity building of our law enforcement agencies, we must welcome them. And there are people, even United States in the past, UK, at least these two countries that I know, they have helped us develop our civil defense organization and bomb disposal and IED handling, and some training was also offered to us, and we must avail. And secondly, we must develop our own institutions within country. We badly need forensic sciences to be taught at institutions. We need some of our established labs at provincial level. They are not functional because we do not have the skills to operate those labs.
All right. I'd like to also understand, as far as this security perspective is concerned and the outfits that are tried to destabilize Pakistan, a lot of reports, in fact the United Nations Security Council report of recent suggests also a collaboration or a merging of the TTP and the Al-Qaeda. Do you feel this might create a bigger challenge for Pakistan?
Yes, because once they merge together or they have a kind of a collaborative model, then their resources multiply, their funding, the latest weapons access, such things will increase. But unfortunately, these are not only the objectives of TTP themselves. There are certain objectives of people, of the players, international players, who want to thwart or who want to stop progress of CPAC. So they knowingly or unwittingly, they become a tool in their hands, and they create that environment, and the net result is that every now and then we see some incidents which raises our concern and world media concern, the powers who are focusing on this area, that what is the future of CPAC and the development project which are there in particularly in Balochistan.
Last question, two parts. First part is a statement by our caretaker Prime Minister Anwarul Haqqar Sahab, who has said that Pakistan will never surrender to radicalization, extremism and intolerance, but would rather fight without falling prey to war fatigue. Second statement by Antonio Guterres on the day of remembrance and tribute to the victims of terrorism, who says that the international community needs to support the victims and survivors of terrorism and use their experience to create change for a better future. Two things that I take out of it: change for a better future and fighting without falling prey to war fatigue. How important are these two statements?
So talking about the caretaker Prime Minister, I think it should be appreciated. This shows the resolve of the government, the highest office of the government, and particularly coming out from a person who himself belonged to a province which has been a victim of such incidences for past almost 3 decades now. So that should be our stated national policy, and acknowledging the sacrifices and highlighting them. I think that is again a very positive thing, but we must capitalize on that, and we must make world realize that we are a victim of terrorism, not only homegrown or regional, but the global players, non-state actors. We are victim,
have been using Pakistan as a playground.
As a playground, because of the proxy wars or their global geopolitical objectives.
But as far as AVM Sahab, the understanding is there, the resolve is there to make a change for the better. That is the first step in the right direction. And I think with all the wars that we have fought, we have the experience, we understand the strategy that they utilize, we understand how to tackle them effectively. The whole thing is that the nation needs to become as one and support our armed forces in the resolve to rid Pakistan of all kinds of terrorism and extremism, and that should be the mindset of each and every Pakistani.
Exactly. That's why the different facets of fifth generation warfare have been imposed on us for past 2 decades, wherein the people are, the foreign players, they are trying to create a wedge between the armed forces and the public support, which is essentially required to execute such operations in settled area even.
Exactly.
And secondly, I would just like to avail a minute on that. We need to make police force available, because they have the wherewithal as far as the intel is concerned, and they know their area well, and they can do that kind of screening and vigilance and community vigilance. But unfortunately, again, police in our country has been massively used for our political objectives. And
but they are also now being treated as first victims when it comes to these elements.
Yes.
TTP, they are also the ones who are targeted.
Yes, but their vulnerability would decrease if we take them out from the protocol duties, if we take them out from other duties, and they will have numbers, strength available to take care of themselves.
Point taken. Thank you very much, AVM Ijaz, Malik Sahab, senior analyst, to have joined us, to have talked about Pakistan's counter-terrorism efforts in the wake of all the incidents that are happening. The latest that, of course, happened in South Waziristan district. 6 brave soldiers embraced martyrdom while fighting against terrorists. But what remains to be done, I think you would agree with me, is that we need to be all supporting the efforts of the armed forces, of the police personnel who help us get rid of these elements, and that resolve should be unanimous irrespective of whichever affiliation you have.
Exactly.
Thank you very much, AVM Sahab. Let's come to our second story, ladies and gentlemen, and that concerns Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir, and the statement that has come from the O.I.C that has called upon India to reverse all the illegal and unilateral measures that have been taken after 5th of August 2019. More in the following report.
Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir has been under an unprecedented lockdown, military siege, and communications blackout since August 2019, with the BJP's government revocation of Article 370, which took away Kashmir's special status as provided in the Indian Constitution. The 5th August 2019 decisions were preceded and followed by the arrest of tens of hundreds of pro-freedom and pro-India politicians and activists, and a massive crackdown on the media. Despite adversity and atrocities unleashed by the Indian security forces, the valiant people of illegal Indian-occupied Jammu and Kashmir have stood firm in their resolve for their legitimate right of self-determination. The Organization of Islamic Cooperation called upon India to reverse all illegal and unilateral measures taken on or after the 5th of August 2019, and to stop the gross, systemic, and widespread human rights abuses in Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir. At an event, a photo exhibition was hosted by the Muslim Bloc's Secretary General in Jeddah, which highlighted the gross human rights violation in the Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir, and to strengthen O.I.C's solidarity with the people of Jammu and Kashmir. The Secretary General recalled that during the 49th session of the Council of Foreign Ministers held in March this year in Mauritania, the Council urged India to reverse all illegal and unilateral measures taken on or after the 5th of August 2019.
Let's get back to the story. The Organization of Islamic Cooperation, that is the O.I.C, Wednesday called upon India to reverse all the illegal and unilateral measures that it had taken on or after the 5th of August 2019, and to stop the gross, systematic and widespread human rights abuses in the Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir. Now this call that of course that I'm referring to, that was made on Wednesday, was made by the O.I.C chief Hussein Brahim Taha, and it was read out by the Assistant Secretary General for the Palestine Al-Quds Affairs Samir Bakr at an event and photo exhibition that was hosted by the Muslim Bloc Secretary General in Jeddah in Saudi Arabia on Wednesday. The event that was in Jeddah was of course this was held under the O.I.C ambit, was held to highlight the gross human rights violations in the Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir region, and of course to strengthen the O.I.C solidarity with the people of Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir. This is a 57-member bloc, if you very well know. We all know that the O.I.C consists of very important players from the Muslim world, and their pressure can lead to tangible result as far as putting pressure on India to reverse its decisions that were taken on or after the 5th of August 2019 are concerned. Now let's also talk about the O.I.C chief Hussein Brahim Taha, who also said that meaningful engagement and dialogue between the parties as well as constructive involvement of the international community are essential steps in the resolution of the Jammu and Kashmir dispute. The fact remains that whatever happens, despite the different statements that have come from the Global North or the O.I.C in the past as well and other important organizations, India does not listen to that. It sometimes calls the whole issue of illegally Jammu and Kashmir as a unilateral issue. It does not want the involvement of any other. The UNMOGIP is not even allowed to enter the Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir region to assess as to what is actually happening there, because of the fears that they might tell the truth. We also know about the clampdown on all the different kinds of media or the social media or the people's voices that emanate through social media platforms is concerned. And we also know that different social media outlets or press outlets that talk the truth, they are also being muted. The latest being Kashmir Walas, that is whose website and the social media handles were also blocked by the Indian government a couple of days back. This shows that they are afraid of the truth that could come out of the Indian held region. The fact also remains that India tries to hogwash the world by, for example, having a tourist summit under the ambit of the G20 in illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir in an enclosed environment. Of course, the world leaders that do go there and do observe understand the bare realities, but the fact also remains that India, being a global player, a global power that is part of the Asia Pacific strategy of the United States, among other countries, that is part of many important blocs across the world, their importance, and of course the fact that it is being used, or it is a foil for certain countries in the global north against the Chinese power or the Chinese emergence in global politics, global economics, that is perturbing many others in the world. That is why a lot of powers, a lot of people, a lot of countries remain mum as far as taking action on the human rights abuses that have been going in the illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir region. The fact remains also that Article 370 or Article 35A, as a subsequent result of the abrogation of Article 370, have changed the whole situation as far as the illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir region is concerned. The whole region has been changed into one that was, as per various United Nations resolutions since 1948, a contested region to one of the Union Territories of India. This is a blatant, it is blatantly going against the United Nations resolutions and of course the international decisions that have been taken as far as the disputed status of illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir is concerned. Dr. Awais bin Wasi, Kashmir leader, joins us online. Dr. Awais, thank you very much to have joined us. Dr. Awais, when it comes to the decision taken by the O.I.C regarding India to revert its decisions taken on or after 5th of August 2019, they also made this pledge on a meeting of the Council of Foreign Ministers that was held earlier in March this year. Will their strategy work this time? Dr. Awais cannot hear us. There's some kind of an issue, at least I think from our side, due to which Dr. Awais is unable to hear us as well. Let's continue with what we were saying. I was trying to talk about and discuss what has been happening as far as the whole 2019 and post 2019 geostrategic or geopolitical situation in the illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir is concerned. Now, Article 370, Article 35A, they have been abrogated since that date, and India, the illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir, that remains a disputed territory as per various United Nations resolutions, starting from 1948, when India had itself gone to the United Nations and had agreed to call illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir a contested disputed region, with both Pakistan and India being parties to this dispute. The fact remains that since then it has changed its strategies vis-a-vis in illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir various times. Post 2019, despite Pakistan's interventions on many a forum and highlighting the Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir issue on various fora through detailed documentations, through different debates that have been held on this important issue as well. The reaction from the world has been far from satisfactory. The O.I.C has been also trying on that level to try whatever it can through different measures, regionally, internationally, to highlight this issue and to pressurize India. But India doesn't seem to care about any kind of pressure as far as that is concerned. And of course, Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir and the Muslims and Pakistan are used frequently as tools by India for its political campaigning, and of course the elections happening next year, India seems to be fully geared to continue in the same vein as it had been doing since the 5th of August 2019 when it comes to the Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir region. So the clampdown on media continues, the clampdown on the different of course kinds of rights of the people continue. The Kashmiri leaders still continue to languish in jails, they are incarcerated, they are trying to put in under house arrest. The women are also subjected to different kinds of brutalities, the children as well, so as to exert such a kind of pressure on the Kashmiri leadership or the youth of the illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir that they do not continue with their struggle for self-determination. But despite all these tactics that are being used, the spirit of the struggle of self-determination within the people, within the public in Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir goes on despite the change in demography that has been quite evident by the different laws that are being now passed by India very randomly, so that the current Muslim majority population in the Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir region becomes a minority, and then of course they can say you can hold any plebiscite you want, and that plebiscite will show that the majority of people do not want to have a different solution than what was taken on the 5th of August 2019. But before any of that actually materializes, it is pertinent on all the important international organizations like the United Nations, like the O.I.C, like G20, G7 or all other important organizations that have India as its member, or that can that have a important strategic relationship with India, to exert the necessary pressure. We are not asking for much. The only thing that is being asked by the people of illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir and by Kashmiris across the world is that we need to tell India that they need to revert what has happened on the 5th of August, on or after the 5th of August, and give the people in illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir their right to self-determination, their right to decide what they want to do with the region that they live in, that they call their home, through a plebiscite. Dr. Awais bin Wasi joins us online. Dr. Awais, can you hear us now?
Yes, I can.
Perfect. Dr. Awais, when it comes to the O.I.C, how important is its role to pressurize India directly or indirectly, looking at the different members of the O.I.C that have also a strong relationship with India?
O.I.C's role has been very positive in this sense that it always upholds the principle of self-determination and right to justice and freedom for the Kashmiris. And recently, in the recent past, O.I.C delegation has also visited Azad Jammu and Kashmir also. And in different statements, O.I.C Secretary General also raised concern about what is happening in Jammu and Kashmir. So this is very important that the Global Muslim Forum raises concerns about the Indian high-handedness and human rights abuses in Jammu and Kashmir. In this, the whole, if you see the context, and if we evaluate the situation after 4 years, that since August 5th, 2019, 4 years have been passed, but the picture in Valley, that is very bleak, that is very grim, and that is, in other words, that we can say that is a dismantled state, and which is controlled remotely by New Delhi governor and some bureaucrats. So the ground situation is unfortunately very grim and very tragic, because in this 4 years recently in Indian Lok Sabha, there is a statement by Member Parliament that around 10,000 women they have been disappeared. So if you see these statistics recently and many other human rights violations, you can understand the gravity of the situation, and O.I.C's concern is quite welcoming, and India should pay heed to the concern raised by global Muslim body.
All right. Thank you very much, Dr. Awais bin Wasi, to have joined us and to have talked to us about this resolve that has been reiterated by the O.I.C and calling upon India to reverse all the unilateral and illegal decisions that it has taken on or post 5th of August 2019, and to stop the gross, systematic and widespread human rights abuses that have been going on in the valley since or even before that. Let's come to our last story, ladies and gentlemen, and that concerns polio virus detection in Rawalpindi's environmental sample. The virus has been found in a sample that was collected from the Safdarabad site on the 10th of August this year. It has tested positive for the wild polio virus type 1. This virus, of course, as we told you, has been taken out from an environmental sample. According to the Pakistan Polio Lab at the National Institute of Health, it is also the WHO Regional Reference Laboratory for the polio program. This, of course, is a cause for concern because of the fact that Pakistan is striving to completely eliminate polio from its country, not from now, but since many years. Our current health minister, Dr. Nadeem Jan, has said that he has formulated a comprehensive strategy to eliminate polio, and special attention is being given to the high risk areas. He also said that an emergency plan has been formed to stop the spread of the virus. It's extremely important that that the polio programs that the government is putting forward, the polio drops that are given to all the children below the age of 5 regularly, various times a year, need to be accepted by all the populace, and all the children need to not only be vaccinated properly so that they do not get polio virus, but also the necessary needs to be done so that our water samples do not test positive for this, because that could be a huge cause of concern for further spreading the virus. And the strategy that has been undertaken by the current caretaker government seems to be in the right vein. With that, ladies and gentlemen, we come to an end of today's newsroom. We'll see you inshallah tomorrow with new story statements that concern us, you and Pakistan. Till then, stay safe. Allah Hafiz.